Japanese is often described as one of the hardest languages in the world. When I first started learning Japanese, I honestly felt lost. People were speaking in complete sentences, but somehow I couldn't figure out who was doing what. Subjects disappeared, and one word could mean multiple things. And sometimes people didn't even seem to answer questions directly. It felt like everybody understood the rules except for me. The biggest mistake that I made was assuming that Japanese was just English with different words. I tried translating everything directly, and that's where the confusion started. For example, in English we might say, I am going to the store, but in Japanese, we might instead just say, itekuru. I kept asking myself, where is the subject? Where is the object? Why is the sentence incomplete? But the problem wasn't Japanese. The problem was that I was looking at it through English. One day, I realized something. Japanese often says only what needs to be said. For example, imagine you are having dinner and your friend asks, Mo tabeta? And you answer with tabeta. In English, this just means ate, which sounds incomplete. Ate what? Who ate? But in Japanese, everyone already knows the context. Japanese often trust the listener to fill in the blanks. Then, there was one more thing that also confused me. Nobody seemed to say no. For example, if asked the question, ikimasu ka, the response might be chotto. When I first heard this, I thought, a little what? But eventually, I realized Japanese isn't always trying to be direct. It's often trying to keep conversations comfortable. Then, I discovered something that is even stranger. Sometimes, the same words can mean completely different things. For example, if said with a bright tone, "いいです" versus a softer tone, "いいです." The former will mean yes, whereas the latter might mean no. Same words, different meaning. Suddenly, I realized learning Japanese wasn't only about the vocabulary, it was also about understanding how people communicate with each other. After years of studying Japanese, passing JLPT N1, and spending 3 months to live in Japan, I realized something. Japanese isn't confusing because it's illogical. It's actually confusing because it's built on a different set of assumptions. English is more explicit, direct, and complete, whereas Japanese is more context based, more focused on relationships, and more focused on the atmosphere. Once I understood that, everything began to make more sense. If you are currently learning Japanese and feeling confused, that's normal because I felt exactly the same way before. But Japanese isn't random, there is a logic behind it. And once you begin to see the logic, the language becomes much more enjoyable and meaningful.